How doing there? 말홍어야지. 이게 슈딩 개바드 차리가래.
Today is the 8th session of our Marngok Summer Teachings. So I'd like to offer my warm greetings to all the monks and nuns in the Source of Refuge, the Sangha, likewise to all of my Dharma friends all over the world, and especially to my Tibetan compatriots. I'd like to offer you my auspicious greetings. So the other day we spoke in brief about the parinirvana of the elder Mahakashyapa. So I thought today I should speak in general terms about the parinirvana of the elder Ananda. Now, when we speak about the story of Ananda's parinirvana, first of all, there are three parts. There is Ananda entrusting the teachings to Shanavasan. The second one is the mistaken recitation of a verse, and the third is the actual parinirvana of Ananda. So this is the account of the parinirvana of Ananda, or the account of his realization. And so the first of the parts is the story of Ananda passing his robes and almsful to Shanavasan and transmitting the teachings to him. When you talk about the elders of the teachings, or the elders of the teacher, you could say, for a certain period of time after the passing of the Buddha Shakyamuni, there was a tradition of passing the teachings on from one person to the next. And so the Buddha passed the teachings to Mahakashyapa, and Mahakashyapa transmitted the teachings to Ananda. So who did Ananda transmit the teachings to? He transmitted them to Shanavasan. So who was Shanavasan? I mentioned him the other day in brief. Now, Shanavasan was the son of a merchant. And since Shanavasan was the son of a merchant, and when he grew up, then he went on an ocean voyage. In the ancient times, many merchants went on ocean voyages in order to gather many types of jewels and precious stones. So this was the tradition. So he crossed the ocean, and then he safely managed to return. And once he returned, he buried all his treasure, or he put it all in a treasury, and then he came to the Bamboo Grove Monastery. When I talk about Bamboo Grove, what this means is a bamboo grove near Rajagriha. And in terms of this is historically the first monastery to be offered to the Sangha as a place for it to stay. And the person who offered it was King Bimbisara. So when we talk about Bamboo Grove, this means a place for the Sangha to stay near Rajagriha. And so this is the place where Shanavasan went. And when he came to Shanavasan, then Ananda was in front of the was pacing in front of the temple. He was pacing back and forth. So he was pacing. It's like often when you say, I'm going to go outside, it's like that's what you say of a god. So it seems, I think that this actually means to go off and to go for a wander. Means to walk back and forth. To walk back and forth without any particular focus. It's just pacing back and forth uh, without any particular aim. So this is what we mean by pacing. Later, it became a type of walking meditation. And so I think this is also related to this pacing. In any case, Ananda was going for a walk outside of the temple at Bamboo Grove when Shanavasan came. And when he saw Ananda, Shanavasan immediately prostrated at his feet. And he said, because of the compassion of the three jewels, I crossed the great ocean and was able to return safely from my voyage. So I'd like to offer a 5-year-long Dharma festival for the Sangha, the Bhikshus, and the Buddha. Now, what we mean by 5-year Dharma festival is that every year for 5 years he would have a large festival of making offerings to the Sangha every once a year for 5 years. So this is what we mean. And so this is what's called a 5-year Dharma festival. And so Shanavasan had crossed the ocean. He'd returned with many different jewels. His trade had gone very well. And likewise, also because of the kindness of the three jewels, he was not harmed or endangered during his ocean voyage. And so, as a celebration of that, he would like to, for 5 years, hold an offering festival once a year for 5 years. And so we asked, where is the Buddha Bhagavan? And then the elder Bhagavan said, the Bhagavan has passed into nirvana. He has passed away, he said. And so he said this to Shanavasan. And when he said that, then Shanavasan, as soon as he heard that the Buddha Bhagavan had passed away, he fainted and fell to the ground. So they sprinkled him with water and they revived him. And then he continued to ask, well, so then where is Venerable Shariputra, he asked. And he has also passed into Parinirvana, has the answer. And so he also asked about Madhgalyana and Mahakashyapa. And when he asked where each of them was, he said they've all passed away. And when he heard this answer, then Shanavasan was very unhappy, he was very distressed. Before he'd left on his ocean voyage, the teacher, the Buddha, and as well as his great disciples were still alive. And after he'd gone and then returned, then the Buddha had passed into nirvana. Likewise, the great disciples in the Buddha's assembly had passed away, and he was very distressed. Likewise, he had promised to hold the 5-year Dharma festival of making offerings every year. It's basically offering it's like our current custom of offering a large meal every year. And so when he held these 5 annual Dharma festivals, and it was completed, then the elder Ananda said to Shanavasan, You have served the Bhagavan's teachings materially, so now you must serve the Dharma, serve it with the Dharma. And so how can I be generous with the generous with the Dharma, Shanavasan said. And Ananda said, it's best if you go forth in the teachings of the Bhagavan and become ordained. And as Ananda said, then Shanavasan immediately promised to do so. And he went forth. So Shanavasan had been protected by Mahakashyapa before he passed away. And so for that, and he had told Ananda that he should pass the teachings to him. And so Ananda also encouraged Shanavasan to go forth and become a monk, and he did so. And he gave him complete ordination through the motion of 4 parts of the request. And so, this becoming fully ordained as a bhikshu. And after he had been taken the oath, he said, from today on, he said, until the end of this life, I shall wear hempen robes made of hemp. So shana is basically a type of fiber. And so he said, wear these robes of hemp. So he wouldn't wear the nicer types of fabric. Instead, he would only wear the hemp robes. And he wouldn't wear any other sort of robe. So this is like a type of oath that he would remain within the qualities of training, the qualities of austerity. Shanavasana was always really smart. He was very intelligent. You could say he was very clever. He had a very clear mind. And just by hearing something once, he could learn it. And so for this reason, Shanavasana was able to memorize all of the 84,000 teachings that the Ananda had heard from the Buddha, and he was able to memorize them. So he had this. So Shanavasana also memorized all of the teachings exactly as Ananda had heard them from these, and he attained the 3 awarenesses and knew the 3 baskets of the teaching as well, or the 3 pitakas as well. And so the person whom Ananda trusted the teachings to was Shanavasana. So next, within the story of Ananda's parinirvana, the second point is the second part is the mistaken recitation of the word crane. So it's the mistake of reciting the word white crane. And what this means is that if you wonder what's the circumstance that led to Ananda passing into parinirvana, so the main circumstance that caused Ananda to pass into parinirvana is that someone mistook their recitation of a verse. And so what it says in the Tibetan translation of the finer points of discipline, so this is in Tibetan, it is also in Chinese. So this is the Mula Sarvastivada tradition text, the finer points of discipline. And what it says is, one day, Ananda was staying with the Sangha of Bhikshus at the Bamboo Grove, the place that I mentioned before, right? It's the grove with a grove of bamboo where the Sangha stayed. And there was a bhikshu who was reciting a verse. He was reciting the verse. As I said, in the old days, the teacher would recite the verse, and then the student would then say it and repeat it. And so there's this way of learning. And so this is what is called reciting the text. So it's repeating so this is a particular way of repeating in order to memorize it. And so this picture was reciting a stanza, and the stanza was, instead of living 100 years, never seeing a white crane, living a single day and seeing a white crane is far better. So whether you say, anyways, it's either white crane or it's a white duck, but it's speaking about a white crane. So it's a basic white waterfowl, water bird. So the meaning is, if a person lives for 100 years, even if they live 100 years, and they may never see a white crane. And instead of that, if one lives a single day and you see a white crane, this is better than it would be for that 100-year-old old person. So it's just kind of strange, actually. It's like a question of seeing a white crane or not. So living 100 years and never seeing a white crane, and instead of that, living 100 years and seeing a white crane is far better. Saying this is a question of seeing a white crane or not. So this is speaking about how important this is. When Ananda heard the bhikshu recite the verse like this, then he went to that bhikshu and he said, "Son, the Bhagavan didn't say that. You're writing it incorrectly. Buddha didn't say that. This is what the Bhagavan said. What the Bhagavan said was, instead of living 100 years without being freed of birth or perishing, living a single day and being freed from birth and perishing is far better." What the Buddha was said is, if you live 100 years, but you aren't freed of birth or perishing, if you're not freed of birth or dying, even if you only live a single day but are able to free yourself from birth and death, then that's far better. Perhaps this is because in the Indian dialect of that time, there's probably something similar between the words for white crane and birth and passion. So it's probably that sort of just a recitation mistake. He said the way you're reciting is wrong. Your recitation is got even mistaken. It doesn't mean white crane. It means birth and perishing. Instead of living 100 years without being freed of birth and perishing, living a single day and being freed from birth and perishing is far better. So this is the advice that he said. And then in addition, what Ananda always said, there are two types of people in the world who criticize in the world. And these are the two types of people that will criticize the teachings. They're the people who criticize Buddhism. The first of these are those who are angry and who have no faith and have short tempers. So not only do they not have any faith, they're very angry people and very hateful people. So these sort of angry people will criticize the teachings or criticize Buddhism. And the other group are those people who have faith, but they misunderstand the teachings. So their understand is, they misunderstand, they take a wrong understanding, and these people also criticize the teachings and are a disgrace to the teachings. And so for that reason, if you memorize the sutras incorrectly, it's like an elephant getting into the quicksand. So in other words, it's a way of basically wasting yourself and ruining yourself, but there's no real benefit to it. You'll destroy your own self. The reason for this is that it's because you don't have the intelligence to understand the teaching. If that's how it happens, then it's the same as so there's no point to it other than that And if you have a misunderstanding, then there's no response. It's like eating poison. So if you understand that there's no benefit to it, it's like eating poison. Instead, not only is it not beneficial, it's also harmful. Therefore, the wise, based on their listening, behave properly in practice, eliminating the afflictions and doubt and reaching liberation. And so in this way, the wise, that means people who are intelligent, first of all, whether they listen to the sutras and the meanings of the sutras properly and have heard it correctly, and then they're practicing it properly, and then they eliminate the afflictions and doubt and eventually reach liberation. And so this is the advice that Ananda gave to the bhikshu. And the bhikshu listened to it, and he went to his abbot, that means like his teacher, and he said it to it, and what the teacher said was, "Now you should listen to Ananda, because Ananda has grown old. He's like all bent over and decrepit. He's grown old and bent. And so he's no longer able to remember the things in his mind. He says all sorts of things. His memory is not reliable. So you really can't believe in him too much. So you just recite exactly as you did before. So just continue reciting as you did before. You shouldn't really believe what Ananda said." So this is what the bhikshu's teacher, abbot, said. And so the Khenpo said, probably thought that, oh, you're probably saying that I didn't want to admit that he had taught a student improperly. So he didn't say, oh, I was mistaken. And if he had said that, oh, you're wrong, then it would have been he was a little bit embarrassed about it. He was, he said, oh, I'm not mistaken. I'm not wrong. It's Ananda who is mistaken. Ananda's not really old. And so he can't remember the words of the sutras well, and so you shouldn't listen, so don't believe him, he said. And just recite as I taught you before. And so this is the instruction he gave his student. So after that, Ananda, then because he had given the advice to the stricken, he went to go study, and he studied it again and again, and to see whether the way the bhikshu was reciting or not. And the bhikshu was reciting the text exactly as that before. He hadn't changed it at all. And because he hadn't changed it at all, then Ananda was a little bit unhappy about this, and he went to this and he said, "Son, didn't I tell you that the Bhagavan didn't say it like that? And you're still reciting it like this. Why are you still reciting it the same way?" He said this to the bhikshu, and when he did, then the bhikshu said what his abbot or what his teacher had said. So he just said exactly to Ananda what his teacher had said. And then when he said that to Ananda, then Ananda thought, I was like, I just don't know what to say. So then Ananda thought to himself. So he thought to himself, if I speak to that bhikshu, I speak to him directly and he's not going to listen. He won't listen to me if I say it directly to him, and there's nothing else I can do. It's like in the past, the great beings, Shariputra and great Maudgalyan and Mahakshapa, if they'd all were there, and they probably also wouldn't have had much that they could do. Not only that, Shariputra and all the rest have already all passed into parinirvana. The Buddha Bhagavan was very compassionate because of the virtue from that. Then the Dharma will be able to will remain 1,000 years, he thought. And so for that reason, he thought to himself, if I remain here, it's not going to benefit, so I think I need to pass away. And so what he said was, the old ones have all passed away, the new ones do not agree with them. I shall remain in solitude like a bird born from an egg. So Ananda was very sad because all of his old friends had passed away. The new students, he didn't get along with the new students, and he alone. And so I'm like, I'm just a bird who's being born out of things, a bird from an egg. When a bird is born from an egg, it comes out all alone, right? So it's like I need to just remain alone. And so he said many other such, many other uh, verses that showed his sadness. And so because of this, these were the circumstances for him to decide that he needed to pass into parinirvana. And so the person who he'd entrusted the teachings to was Shanavasan, and what he said is, the Bhagavan entrusted the teachings to Mahakashyapa and then passed away. Mahakashyapa then entrusted them to me, and now I have entrusted the teachings to you, and now I will pass into nirvana. So you must always protect these teachings. You protect them well. In the future, in the city of Mathura, there is a mountain called Murunda. And there is a merchant on that mountain, and he has two sons, named Nata and Pata. So in the Tibetan translation, it says Nata and Pata. So it's as if there are two sons, Nata and Pata. But the Chinese sources only mention one son. In any case, there's a merchant in Mathura. Yes, the children, they'll build a temple there, and then the children will become the patrons of the temple. And so this is the Buddha Bhagavan predicted this. So there's this prophecy, and then also in the land of Mathura, there's an incense seller, something Gupta. So there's an incense seller, Gupta, who will have a son named Upagupta. So in the future, you need to ordain him and make him a monk. And the Buddha predicted that 100 years after my parinirvana, there will be a Buddha without any science. And so that Upagupta will in the future become a Buddha, is the prediction or the prophecy. So in the future, he'll be able to perform the activity of the Buddha. And so you need to find him and ordain him. And so in this way, Ananda actually entrusted the teachings to Shanavasan, and Shanavasan then promised and committed to doing exactly as Ananda said. And so this shows the circumstances of why Ananda wanted to pass away and the events that happened. So next we have the parinirvana of Ananda. Now, when you ask about how is it that Ananda passed into parinirvana, well, as is described in the Mulasarvastivada, Finer Points of Discipline, after Ananda had entrusted the teachings to Shanavasan, then what he thought to himself was, if I pass into parinirvana here, then King Jatashatru in the land of Vriji, Vrija means the country where Vaishali was. So Vaishala was a city in the land of Vriji. In any case, the Ajatashatru in the country of Riji, will come into contact. There's a danger they'll come into contact, and the reason for that is if I pass away in Vaishali, or if I pass away in Magadha, then the people in Vaishali will not have any opportunity to get news. They don't get each other. At that point, there is a conflict there because of that. If I pass away in Magadha, then the king of Magadha will not give the people of Vaishala any of my remains or my relics. If I pass away in Vaishali, then the people of Vaishala will not give any of the relics from my body. And so what I need to do is I need to pass away in the middle of the river of the river Ganges. So and sort of not to pass away in Vaishala, not to pass away in Magadha, but right in between Vaishali and Magadha there's the river Ganges in between. So he said that he was going to pass away in the center of the river Ganges. And so he went to the Ganges. And he went to the Ganges. Then at that point, King Ajatashatru at that point had a dream. And what he dreamt was that, so normally the king has he has a parasol held above his head. So there's a parasol held over his head, and with that poop, and so he dreamt that the staff of the parasol broke. And when he dreamed this, he immediately woke up in fright. And as soon as he woke up, the doorkeeper then came and said, Elder Ananda sent a message that he'll pass into parinirvana. So when the doorkeeper said this, then on hearing this, Ajatashatru fell into a fade. And so after a while, they sprinkled him water and he was able to be revived. And so when he recovered consciousness, the king immediately says, where will the Venerable Ananda pass into parinirvana? Then Shanavasan said, is he going to pass away in Vaishali? That's what he said. This is the basic meaning of it. Shanavasan said, he's gone off to Vaishali. He's gone in the direction of Vaishali, he said. He didn't say that he was going to pass away, though. He said he's gone in the direction of Vaishali. And so King Ajatashatru and his army with the 4 divisions, with a huge army, they all put on their armor and they got their weapons and they all went to the banks in the direction of Vaishali to the Ganges River. Now, at the same time, the gods who lived in Vaishali, so in Vaishali, there are the local deities, right? The local protectors and local deities. So these said to the Vaishali people, the people of Vaishali, Ananda has decided that he's to pass into Parinirvana. He's coming in the direction of Vaishali. So this is what the gods of Vaishali said to the people of Vaishali. And so the people of Vaishali are called the Lichavis. So they also prepared their armies and they came to the other side of the bank of the Ganges River. When they came to the other side, then, so on the one side, the near side, there was King Ajatashatru with his army. And on the other side, there was the people of Vaishali with their army. And Ananda was on a boat. And he had come to the middle of the Ganges River. And then at that point, King Ajatashatru bowed his feet to Ananda's feet. So basically, he probably took a boat to where Ananda was and prostrated to him. Or if you pass away if you think you need to pass away to Parinirvana, then please leave your remains here for us, for our sake. And then the Vaishali, people of Vaishala also prostrated from afar, and they asked, please leave your remains with us, they asked. And when they all asked, then what Ananda thought was, if I pass away in the city of Magadha, then the Lichavis will be very hurt. And if I leave my body in Vaishali, then the king of Magadha, Jatashattra, will be really upset. So there's nothing I can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give half of my remains to King Ajatashattra and half of it to the Lichavis of Vaishali. If I do this, then they'll both have support for faith and they'll be able to make offerings to it. So thinking this, then Ananda was about to pass into Nirvana. And at this point, the great earth shook in 6 ways. And at that point, so just before he passed into Nirvana, was in the middle of the Ganges River, then at that time, suddenly, a sage with a retinue of 500 disciples came to see Ananda. This is some sort of a sign. He was probably seen had miraculous power, so he flew up into the air and he flew over to Ananda and he said, please bring us forth, please make us monks. And when they made that request, then Ananda basically expected Ananda accepted, and so the sage had 500 students. They're still on the banks, and he said, well, if everyone could come together with me, and at the moment he thought about them, the 500 disciples also, even though they didn't have miraculous powers, because of Ananda's thinking about them, they're immediately able to come right there. So they're able to come to the center of the river. And when they got to the center of the river, Ananda emanated an island in the middle of the river. So he made this like piece of land, an island there. And they all, with that in the middle, with no place, and there's in the middle, a small island, there's nowhere to go anywhere, and they probably all became up. And they all went forth, and he gave them full ordination. He gave them the going forth and the full ordination together. And when that was completed, then, in the very end, you have to recite the text 3 times, right? So in the 3rd time, then they'd achieved, the first time they achieved the result of irreversibility, and the 3rd time they abandoned all afflictions, achieved the level of aharsha. And because at that time they'd achieved arhatship, the place where they had gone forth, the time and the place where they had done this, the place where they'd done it was in the middle of the river, and the time was in the middle of the day. So some of them were called mid-river, and some people were called midday. And so these are the names they were given. So they'd all gone forth. Not only that, they'd achieved arhatship, and so because of that, they prostrated at Ananda's feet. They said in the past, the Bhagavan brought the wandering mendicant Subhadra. He was the last person who the Bhagavan Buddha had ordained, and so he, before the Buddha passed away, he was the last one to be ordained. But likewise, also, even before the Buddha passed away, he actually passed away first. And so he passed away before the Buddha passed away. So similar, we also would like to enter parinirvana first before you do. We don't dare watch you pass into parinirvana. We can't watch you pass away. So even before you do, we're going to pass into nirvana. So the main point is, before you pass away, we're gonna pass away first. We're gonna die before you do. And so what Ananda said is, the Bhagavan entrusted the teachings of Mahakashyapa before passing into Parinirvana. And Mahakashyapa entrusted the teachings to me. Now I'm going to pass into Parinirvana soon. So you need to protect these teachings. In particular, the Buddha protected that in the future in Kashmir. So here he's making a prophecy about Kashmir. Because in the past, the Kashmir had prophesied that that in Kashmir the requisites are such places and to stay are easy to get. So it's a best place to meditate, jhana. So Kashmir is a place where it's an easier place to get what you needed, and so the place of Kashmir would be very good for those people who would practice jhana meditation. It's the best place to practice jhana. Also, the Bhagavan predicted that 100 years after my passing, there will be a bhikshu named Madhyantin, or the middle of the day, and he will spread the teachings in Kashmir. So you all also have to go to Kashmir and spread the teachings there. And so this is the prediction that he made. And so the Arhat Madhyantin, or midday, probably means like the 500 students of the sage. This probably means one of these 500. So his name was Midday or Madhyantin. And so this is what Ananda said, and the 500 made this commitment. So first of all, they said, before you pass away, we can't watch you pass away. And so before you pass away, we're going to pass into nirvana, they said. And then Ananda said, it's not right to do that. You can't do that. Go to Kashmir, and there's a prophecy by the Buddha that you will go and spread the teachings of Kashmir, so you need to go and spread the teachings there. So I think that this is related to the Sarvastivada sect. And the reason for this is that the main seed of the Sarvastivada teachings, the hub of the Sarvastivada teachings, is Kashmir. And so the prophecy of this Kashmir is probably connected to the fact that it's from a Sarvastivada teaching. So now we will take a half-hour intermission.
나서 다 되네. 아니 다 그런 거 여기 니마 공부라서 봐 롱된 사회 제례야 아니.
Now, then, after Ananda had made the prophecies about the midday or Madhyanantin, he blessed his body, displayed various miracles, and like dousing of water the fire, passed into nirvana. Half of his body was the people of Vaishala got half his body, and King Ajatara got half. So then the Lichavis built a stupa for them in Vaishali. They placed these relics in that. And King Ajatashatru also built a stupa for them in Pataliputra. As I mentioned the other day, it said that it was Ajatashatru's son who moved the capital to Pataliputra. So this is what I said the other day. In any case, and because it is said here that he built a stupa for them in Pataliputra. And generally, our northern traditions, scriptures, and our in the Tibetan tradition, this is the account of the parinirvana of Ananda. So next, I would like to speak about the way it is described in the southern tradition, the Theravada tradition. Now, within the scriptures of the southern traditions, the account of Ananda's passing away is included in the treatises. There is a commentary on the Dhammapada. And so the discussion of Ananda's parinirvana is included in here. So the first of it, the the transition to the sort of parinirvanas, parinirvana comes the way the transition to it is that first there is a quotation in the text. It's a quotation from the Pali Jataka tales, and so the Pali Jataka tales include 547 Jataka tales, and among them, the 166th is the Jataka tale of Upasalaha. So the Upasalaha Jataka. So it's the Jataka tale of Upasala. And so in Tibetan, if you translate it, is the Jataka tales of the nearby house. So here's the 14,000 homes here will all be burnt. There is no place where there is no birth and death, as is the quotation. In any case, if there is a question, is there any place where people haven't ever died? There is not. And so the commentary quotes this verse, and the explanation it gives is that after rebirth, in the old day, they had a custom of burying corpses. So if you look at if there's any place on the earth where no one had ever died, so is there any such place? And it said there is none. Except Elder Ananda was different. Because Ananda, he passed into parinirvana where no person had ever died before. So how is it that Ananda had passed away in a place where no other person had ever died? How did this occur? And so then it says, this is what I've heard. In the Pali tradition, it said that when Ananda passed into parinirvana, he was 120 years old. And so he was examining his lifespan to see how much longer he would remain. And so when he was examining them, this is similar to what we had in Tibet. You'd go to a lama and ask them to protect the length of how long you would live. So this is a custom in Tibet, right? It's like, oh, please give me a prediction of how long I would live. This is similar to that. So when Anandananda reached the age of 120, he finally got around to examining how long he'd live. And then he saw that he would pass into parinirvana. And so he announced, I shall pass into parinirvana in 7 days. So he announced it. That's when he told everyone. He says it very publicly. He spread this, he announced this in the public. He said, in 7 days, I'm going to pass into parinirvana. And when he made the announcement, there is a river called the Rohini. So this river, the Rohini, so the people who lived on the far side and the near side, and when they heard of this, they heard this situation, and the people on the far side, first the people on the near side, what they thought was, what they said was, we have venerated the elder highly and many times. So the place where he passes into nirvana is going to be on our side. And so they said he'll pass away on our side. While those on the far side said, what they said is, we have venerated the early highly. We've helped him out quite a bit. So he's definitely going to pass where we live. And so this is what they also said. And so Ananda heard what they were saying on both sides of the river. And when he heard that, he thought, the people on the near side and the far side, they all have really helped me. They've all venerated me quite a bit. And so I can't say that they didn't venerate me and didn't help me. Now, if I pass away on the near side of the river, the people on the far side of the river won't get any relics. And so for that reason, the people on the far side will, in order to get some of the relics, will fight with the people on the near side of the river. So that's one danger. Likewise, if I go to pass away on the far side of the river, and the people on the near side of the river will cross the river and fight with the people on the other side. And if they have a dispute, the main cause of this is the cause for it comes down to me alone. And in order for them to remain in peace, in order for there to be no past, I need to figure out a way to do this. And so what he said is, he said, the people on the near side of the river have venerated me, and the people on the far side has also venerated me and helped me quite a lot. And so for that reason, there's no one who hasn't venerated me or served me or helped me. You've all been very kind to me. And so if you on the near side of the river, you come over, gather on the near side and wait there. You on the far side, you gather on the far side of the river and gather there. You all get there and wait. So this is what he said. And then 7 days later, elevator, this is river, the Rohini River. He went into the middle of the river. And when he got into the middle of the river, what he did is he displayed a supernatural power. And he levitated 7 palm trees into the river. So palms are pretty tall trees, right? So he levitated 7, so that's how high the 7 of the palm trees. He levitated up there, and then he sat cross-legged there. And then he taught the Dharma to everyone gathered there. Now, after he gave the Dharma teaching, what he said was, my remains will be split in 2 parts, and may half of them fall on the far side of the river, and may half fall on the near side. And then he spoke these words of truth, and then at that moment, while he's sitting cross-legged, he entered the absorption of all pervasive fire. This is one of the types of samadhis or meditation. So he entered the absorption of all pervasive fire, and then his fire immediately, without anyone else lighting it, burst into flames. So just naturally, fire arose and burnt his body. And then the relics then was split into 2 parts, and one fell on the far side, one fell on the near side. And so Ananda passed into parinirvana, and then his remains were burnt by this natural fire, and then the relics were, the people on both sides of the river got the relics, and when they saw that, everyone was really very sad about this, and they wailed sorrowful. They felt like the earth was going to it was going to split in 2, as if the whole earth was going to split. They said that there weren't even that many people who were wailing and laments at the time that the Buddha Bhagavan passed away. So it's even more heart-rending, even more affecting than the wails of lament at the Buddha's parinirvana. And this wasn't just one day or 1 month. It was like for 4 months, everyone from all directions grieved, and they cried, and they shed tears. And what they said was, if there are any elders of the teachings, like Ananda, then any regent of the teacher, if there were some of them like this, then it's no different than of the teacher's life. But now we've been separated from our teacher. In the past, even though the teacher was not there, Ananda was there, so they felt like it was no different than if the Buddha was there. But now they felt like we've really lost our teacher, and so they lost in this way. So this is the account in the commentary on the Dhammapada from the Pali tradition. Now, also there's Tang Xuanzang, who during the 7th century came to India, and as he recorded everything he saw on his way to India. He took notes and everything. And so this is what is called the Great Tang Records on the Western regions. And so this is a very well-known text. And so in Tibetan, we call it the travel logs of Xuanzang. So what it really is the Great Tang's records of the Western regions. So when he was going to India, what he says is that he saw that there's a place. He came to this the place where he came to the place where Ananda's remains had been split into two and they were divided into two stupas. And so I thought I would show this text to you. I made a very rough translation from the Chinese. So this is from the 7th volume, or the 7th fascicle of the Great Tang Record shows in the Western. Just now, I don't need to read every word for it verbatim. What it says is like over 30 li, or travel from the Shvetapura temple. So there's this temple, the Shvetapura Buddhism. So it's traveling over li, or basically half kilometers. Where you get to is on the south side and on the north side of the rivers. So on both sides of the Ganges, there's a place where there's a stupa on the north and a stupa on the south. What these stupas are, where the noble Ananda divided his remains into the two parts, they say. So who was Ananda? Ananda was the Kathasan on his father's side. So the Buddha's father's Shuddhasan's brother's son. So he was a cousin of the father. He was very learned and had achieved the Dharana of never forgetting. He had very wide knowledge of all areas of knowledge. After the Buddha's parinirvana, he succeeded Kashyapa in protecting the teachings and the guidance students. And so after the Buddha's parinirvana, he succeeded Kashyapa in protecting the teachings and guiding the various students. So one day when he was walking through a forest, he saw Novice monk reciting Buddhist sutras. And what the monk was receiving, he was mixing up the order and reciting pronouncing the words improperly. So when he heard this, and he remembered much about the past, he remembered the time when the Buddha had been present, how fortunate he had been. And so he had a very strong feeling in his mind, and eventually he approached the bhikshuni and he wanted to correct the monk's mistakes. So that was an idea, but the novice would just kind of laughed and said, "Elder, you're old. You've gotten told you're saying all sorts of stupid stuff. My teacher is very wise, and he's really in the prime of his life. And he taught it me exactly like this. He taught it directly to me. So my teacher is like the best of scholars, and he's taught it to me directly. So it's not possible that there could be any mistakes." So Ananda just didn't know what to say. So he went out and then he kind of sighed. And he said, "No, I am old. I am old, but I would like to stay longer in the world for the sake of all sentient beings to uphold the true Dharma." But if sentient beings are so obscured by thick obscurations that they won't listen to the instructions, staying longer is futile. I should enter nirvana soon. So first of all, I am old, but I'd still like to stay a little bit longer in this world. This is what I think, but people are like so incredibly obscured. Even if I give them any instruction, there's no benefit to it. So instead, it's better for me to pass into parinirvana. And then he left Magadha for Vaishali. So the first he left for Magadha and he wanted to go to Vaishali. And he's thinking this. Once he got in the middle and got to about the middle of the river, then the king of Magadha, King Ajatashatru, heard that Ananda had departed. And he really felt very attached to Ananda. He thought it's not okay if Ananda goes. And so he rushed there with an army of several 100,000. So basically he left with like tens of thousands of soldiers, and they immediately went there. And on the southern bank of the river, so on the southern bank of the Ganges River, they made up an encampment. They stayed there. At the same time, the king of Vaishali heard that Ananda was coming to Vaishali, and he felt really joyful and he felt joy and sorrow at the same time. And so he immediately led also several 100,000 troops to come and welcome Ananda. And so they came from the north bank of the river, and they made an encampment there. So on both sides, you had tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of troops facing each other. And it's like their banners were obscuring the sun. There's such a huge army that you'd think that their flags would block out the sun. And so then he was afraid that these two countries, Vaishali and Magadha, might fight and then kill each other. So he thought there was a danger that they do this. Then, in order that there not be such a fight, Ananda rose up from the boat, levitated into the air, and displayed many supernatural powers. And right there, he entered nirvana. And as soon as he did that, his body was immediately consumed by this like natural fire. And then once again, his remains, half of them remained on the southern bank, and the other half fell on the northern bank. And so the king of Magadha and the king of Vaishala each got a half. And as soon as they got them, then all the armies cried out in grief, and they returned to their respective countries, and they built stupas and made offerings unto those armies. So, in any case, during the time of Tang Xuanzang's trip to India, he saw these stupas on the northern and the southern banks of the Ganges River, and this is the place where Ananda's remains had been divided into two. Next, I would like to give an conclusion to the account of Ananda's parinirvana. So as I said before, the parinirvana of noble Ananda, this story or the account of this is described both in the southern and the north and in the transmissions of Buddhism. It's clear in the scripts and in the texts of all three traditions. We think about the northern tradition, it includes the Mulasarvastivada finer points of discipline, the life of King Ashoka, likewise the sutras of King Ashoka, and also, as I mentioned the other day, the lives of the elders, the lives of the elders, and then next to them, the Great Tang records on the Western regions, so which I just mentioned. So it's in these and other texts that the parinirvana of nirvana is mentioned. In terms of the text of the southern tradition, as I mentioned before, it's the commentary on the Dhammapada. In the Tibetan tradition, the main source is the Mulasarvastavada Finer Points of Discipline, and also Taranata's History of Buddhism in India. So this is where it's mentioned there. Now, when we look at these texts, and so if we really compare the accounts in these different texts, then there are a couple of points that we can really clearly understand. The first of these is that in the script sources from the northern and the Tibetan traditions, what it says is that the location of our Ananda's Parinirvana is said to be the river Ganges, while in the southern tradition it is the river Rohini. So the river Rohini, these days near Gorakhpur, present-day Gorakhpur, there's a Rohini river, and I'm not sure if that's the one. But it's generally accepted that he was born on the Ganges River. And so when Tang Xuanzang traveled through India, it was accepted at that time that it was on the Ganges River. But it does say in the southern tradition's commentary on the Dhammapada that he passed away on the Rohini River. So there's a question of a little bit of difference in terms of where he passed into parinirvana, where his relics were divided. The second point is that according to the sources from the northern and Tibetan traditions mention King Ajatashatru of Magadha and the people of Vaishala and how they had the conflict over the relics. And so both sides had the wish to achieve this, to gain the relics. The southern tradition only says basically the people on the near and far side of the river. Some mentions the people on the far side and the near side of the river Rohini, but it doesn't mention the king's name. It doesn't mean the people of Vaishali. It doesn't mention that at all. Now, the similarity between the two is they speak about the two sides of rivers. So in this respect, they are the same. But in the southern tradition, other than that, it really doesn't give any detail. Now, the third point is that in the text from the northern and the Tibetan traditions, the division of his realms and the building stupas and making offerings are all mentioned, whereas in the southern tradition's account, none of that's said. But the southern one speaks about the grief that everyone felt. It speaks about the southern tradition speaks about the grief about Ananda's death, but it doesn't mention building stupas or making offerings or anything like that. So if in terms of these different points, there are some differences between the northern and the southern traditions. So basically the northern and the southern traditions and the Tibetan traditions, the northern and the Tibetan traditions are the same, but the southern tradition is a bit different. So in terms of these in these 3 points where these differences are, but fundamentally the account of Ananda's parinirvana basically agree. Likewise, even though there's some difference between the northern and Tibetan traditions and the southern tradition, there are some differences, but they generally agree. So if you speak about the short version of his of Ananda's parinirvana, when he at Parinirvana, he knew that the king of Jatashatru of Magadha and the people of Vaishana, the people from Vaishala wanted to get it for Vaishala, the people from Magadha wanted it there. And knowing this, in disordered, since thinking about this, he, in a river between the two, he entered the samadhi of all-pervasive fire and passed into parinirvana. And his remains were divided into two and given to both sides. So that's really the content of the story. So the next point is, if we think about the parinirvana Mahakashyapananda, so what are the differences between the two? What are the particular points? So this is what I'd like to speak about next. And so if we think about it in terms of what do we see from the accounts of Ananda's parinirvana? As I mentioned before in speaking about this account of Ananda's parinirvana, what we can know from this is there's several things we can understand. The first is that while Ananda was alive, many people considered him to be very important. And even when he passed into nirvana, there were many people who really wanted to watch him pass into parinirvana, so that we can clearly understand this. Now, the second is that in order to fulfill many people's wishes, Ananda divided his remains into two parts. So he divided the remains into two parts and gave them to both sides. So this is actually very, really particular. In the past, the Buddha's remains had been split into 8 parts, as the accounts say, right? The relics that were left, his remains were cremated, and then there are some relics that remained, and all that were left over were divided into 8 and given to different to the 8 different countries. They're decided. So this is spoken of. So dividing the relics into parts is mentioned for the Buddha Bhagavana, but not for anyone else. But it also did happen with Ananda. So there is this account of Ananda's passing away. So this also shows how important Ananda was and how he was considered like the Buddha at the time. Now, the third point is that for Ananda's parinirvana to resemble the Buddha, it shows how people recognize him. So what this shows that people consider him Samhara, it shows that everyone thought of him as like the regent of the Buddha, as being similar to the Buddha. So that's the other thing we can see. And similarly, the manner of Ananda's parinirvana illustrates how the great responsibility he had taken on in leading the Sangha after the Buddha's parinirvana. We speak about many of the elders, whether they speak out of 5 or 7 or even more elders of the teachings. In any case, among the several different elders of the teachings, Mahakashyapa was, of course, extremely important. But even compared, Ananda was even better known than Mahakashyapa, and was had a greater status in these, and there are more people who liked him in society. And the fifth point is that we can understand the type of connection that Ananda had with the society at that time, because Ananda at that time was someone who got along with everyone. He could get along with anyone at all. There are a lot of people who liked him within the Sangha of Bhikshus. Within the Sangha of Bhikshunis, there are many people who liked him. Likewise, in terms of kings, there are many who liked him. In the public, many liked him. There are many men who liked him. There are many women who really liked him. Basically, everyone really loved Ananda. From one perspective, he was actually, if you saw him, he was very handsome. We say in English, he was a handsome red. He was very charismatic. He was really beautiful. He had a very beautiful eyes. And so for this reason, whether you're a man or woman or whoever, you're gonna like him. And everyone who say Ananda is coming, then everyone would get very happy. And when he taught the Dharma, then everyone felt like no one was ever bored. And so in this respect, Sananda was these days was socially someone who was very good at making connections between people. He was really the best at making connections. So next, when we think about the account of Mahakashyapa's parinirvana, what we can see from that from Mahakashyapa, we can see that there's actually some distance, a large distance between Kashyapa and the society of his time. He didn't. There weren't many people who were rushing to see him. There wasn't any. Basically, when he passed away, basically Ananda knew that he was going to pass away at the Kukutpada mountain, but basically anyone else, no. He went to an empty, unpopulated place and passed away there. And so this shows that there is a distance between him and the society of the time. And I think the reason for this, if you think about it from one perspective, is that he actually usually enjoyed being in solitude. He always stayed in solitude and didn't really seem to enjoy making connections with people. And so, in this respect, I think this is another point. I think that this is one factor. And so this shows that there's a distance between that, but in terms of the Dharma, he was actually considered very highly. He went to the land of the Nagas, he went to the land of the gods before he passed away. He went to the land of the Nagas, he went to the land of the gods, and there's the way that Shakara and the other gods show him expect a great respect. Likewise, the way he blessed his remains so that they would so that they would remain until the time that Maitreya and his students could come there. So in terms of the Dharma, he was extremely significant and very important figure. This is another thing that this shows us. Now, the other point is that the account of Mahakashyapa's parinirvana and the example of his parinirvana primarily teaches about the situation in the religion. It doesn't really speak about the influence of that on the actual social conditions. It says nothing about the effect that it had on the society. If you compare it to Ananda's, of course, there are a few, such as King Ajatashatru, but it didn't have as much of an effect on society as Ananda's parinirvana did. So this is what the topic, or what the content of the account shows us. So in summary, the latter parts of Mahakashyapa and Ananda's lives and their parinirvanas, what we can see from these accounts is that for both of them, because of their stories of accounts of both of their parinirvanas, instead of speaking about them in general, the points that we can understand from the accounts of both of their pariniras. The first of these is that these accounts are all from a later time. They come from the period of the schools of Nikaya Buddhism. They were taught during that period and then passed down from then. And so even so, they do show us the actual situation of the Buddhist Sangha after the Buddha's parinirvana to a certain degree. And the second point that shows is that the form of the content of the accounts shows the situation of the internal situation of the Buddha Sangha. Likewise, the mutual connections within the Sangha. For example, like you could say there's Mahakashyapa and Mahakashyapa's faction, as well as Ananda's factions. You could see the connection between the two, and you can understand a fair amount about it from these accounts. So that's basically how it is. So I think that's basically what we have to say. But the most important point here is that, how shall I say it? The main thing we spoke about today was the life of Ananda and his parinirvana. When you speak about his nirvana, there were many people who really liked him. And in the end, they were ready to have a war over his relics. The people from Vaishali and Magadha were about to have a battle over his remains. And what this shows is how much people loved him. Both sides, whether they're from Magadha or whether they're from Vaishala, everyone really loved Ananda. And it shows how significant he was. And so for this reason, they were almost ready to fight a war over it. And so this shows how Ananda was really different from anyone else. With Mahakashyapa, then, from one perspective, his character was that he always spent his time in solitude. He didn't make a lot of connections to other people. And he meditated on samadhi and remained practicing austerities. And so that's his character. So for that reason, when he passed into parinirvana, he went to an unpopulated, empty place and passed away there. It's not like a lot of people came. He didn't pass away in the middle of many people where everyone could see. And for that reason, the people didn't have a great feeling about that. So that's the difference. So that's enough for today.